Welcome to Hull and Estates and Succession Planning, a series of podcasts hosted by Ian Hull and Susanna Popovic-Montag. The podcast you are listening to will provide information and insights into estate planning in Canada. From the offices of Hull and Toronto, here are Ian and Susanna.
Hi, and welcome to Hull and Estates and Succession Planning. We're on our mini-series, Part 2, with Jordan Atin, and I'm Ian Hull. Well, Jordan, last week's the podcast that we delved into was sort of talking about gifting and then specifically about charitable gifting.
Right.
So today, let's spend some time talking about some of the specifics of charitable giving.
Sure.
And both Jordan and I, with great pride, can say that we are not tax lawyers. And we don't pretend to give any tax advice ever in our day, and certainly not today. But the tax element of charitable giving, I think it's worth talking about in some of the concepts, and so that it seems to me it's such a personal decision. It's also very personal that the people we tell our clients to go see your advisor and see your own tax advisor,
right,
because your personal circumstances will drive what charitable style or effect of the charitable giving can give. You can use. So if we step back and we talk about charitable giving generally, what are the two sort of approaches to charitable giving in a will and typically set out?
Well, one classic way is to leave an amount, for example,
right, to
a specific amount. I leave $100,000 to X charity for the general purposes of the charity. For example, maybe I like this charity and I want to leave a specific amount. I trust them to do what they wish with it. So that's one way of doing it. And there's all kinds of variations on that. You can leave a percentage of your estate to a charity as well, rather than a fixed amount. Maybe you want to leave a quarter or some percentage. So that's two ways of at least giving some amount to charity. The other way is sometimes, and there are, like you said, there are a myriad of different ways, but another way is to sort of control what those funds are used for. And so you can direct that, and they're called donor-advised funds. So you as the donor are advising the charity as far as what purposes you're to use that for. I only want it for research. I only want it if it's going to a hospital for benefit of care, those sorts of things.
Now, let's step back then, and if we're looking at the charitable giving, the process, one of the things that I struggle with when we're on the contentious side is that battles over a charitable gift can be sort of subsumed by the fact that when someone was alive, they fixated on the tax benefit, and they planned for the tax as opposed to planning for the gift. Right. Do you see that sort of thing, and do you talk to your clients about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people are to some degree obsessed with taxation and minimizing it. That's fine. That is, in my view, as a lawyer, the sort of the least important. If you can do everything that you want to do and then save tax, that's great. If the tax is driving where your estate's going, I think you're probably having the tail wag the dog.
And speaking of that, what's a good classic example of the tail wagging the dog is, of course, probate tax.
Right. So what people will do is put things in joint ownership, for example, when really with one kid, and really the intention is that there's to share that asset among all the kids, but just for tax planning, they're going to put everything joint with one kid. And sure enough, when the parent dies and the one kid says, "Well, Mom really meant it all to go to me," there's a dispute now, and so that really didn't accomplish what the intention was.
All right, so let's take a moment and talk a little bit about the specifics of the tax concepts. And the tax concepts are, of course, that when you give gifts of property, either on your death or if you give it during your lifetime, depending on the circumstances, there is this whole. The one tax in Canada that we're cursed with, so to speak, is the deemed disposition tax. That when something is disposed of, there's a tax on the capital gain, the growth in that, whatever that is. And an easy example would be shares. The classic example with the demutualized shares that came out of the insurance industry a few years ago. They were all issued to people who own the policies, but they're issued at zero cost base. So eventually, when people sell those shares, there's going to be a big tax hit in there because they all came out and popped up in the $20 range and so forth and went up and down from there.
Right. And basically, if you're just trying to estimate that, you'd basically say, if I bought it for zero and it's X dollars now, the tax that you're actually going to pay on that is a quarter of X.
Right.
That's the basic way of thinking of it.
So one of the tricks that if we're going to look to, if our goal is to give to our family, or at minimum give to charity, one of the great tools that the government of Canada has allowed us to do is to donate shares,
right,
and to specifically donate shares to a charity, and whether you do it during your lifetime or during death. But if we're going to today's podcast focus on death, when that deemed disposition occurs and that donation of shares goes specifically and expressly to a charity, there can be a tremendous tax advantage to your tax burden on your death.
Right, exactly.
And you can help eat away at that 25% hit that could be that is lurking,
right,
on the shares. So
I mean, and death is important. Obviously, we're talking about sort of death planning. I mean, that's the one day when you know you're going to sell those shares, because that's what the government, that's what our tax code says, is that on the day of death, you're deemed to have sold everything. So you know there's going to be a hit there, and that's why sometimes people make the charitable donation then, because that's when they're going to trigger the tax.
Right. So, and we have the other options, of course, is to, if we're going to want to give to charity, and it's a nice thing because you want to enhance your state as best you can. So the more money that you can spread around and the less tax you pay, actually, if you talk to good financial advisors, you can net yourself out and do very well to save tax and enhance your family and enhance a charity.
Right. You basically are creating more money.
That's right.
By giving to charity, and therefore reducing the amount you're going to. The only people who lose is the government, and the charities take that extra money. So if structured properly, there's a great savings there.
So the other another idea, not the by any means, there's many ideas, is that the idea is that you could also consider, if you wanted to lock down a specific amount, for example, is to designate a charity on your RSP as the recipient on your death, or on your RIF. Right. So you know the fixed amount or thereabouts that you're going to be giving, and you end up creating another tremendous tax savings on the date of death when the capital gains is triggered, because as we know, on RIFs and RSPs, there's a very big inherent tax payable on that amount.
Yeah, we were talking about the 25% rule on capital property. It's different. I mean, it's even worse. It's double that on a RIF or an RSP, because you basically 100% of that, of the value of that RSP or RIF, goes into income, and you're going to be paying 50% tax likely by that if it's a sizable RIF. So tax is 50% of the RIF. So that's how important charities, that's the benefit of appointing charities as beneficiaries of that, because the tax it is so large.
So significant.
Yeah.
So that's another tool. I mean, and really what we wanted to do today was just take some of these tools and illustrate. Another example would be to illustrate the need to consider these options if you want to balance the gifting to the family and gifting to family and friends or whoever, and to charities. Another idea is, of course, if you have share options and so forth, because if you cash in a share option during your lifetime, it's thrown into your income, right, as income for that year.
Right.
And another option is allow for that possibly to be dealt with through the on death to a charity.
Right. Yeah.
So
for sure.
Those are three just simple ideas that come about.
Can I mention one more?
Oh, I encourage it.
People use life insurance as well, and designating charities for life insurance of life insurance policies, which is another. You know when that money's coming in, and there's some complicated tax benefits to it, but that's another one.
Oh, that's great. So we've got four good illustrations. So we've now enhanced the size of our estate. We've told our family about the charitable gifting that we're going to do.
Right.
So there's not going to be a fight, and we've left a great legacy, because we owe that to. We feel we owe that to our next generations and so forth. So again, thank you very much for joining me today.
It's been my great pleasure. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I remind everyone, please, to go to familywar.com to get Jordan's book. He explains these concepts in much more detail, and I appreciate you taking your time today. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ian.
You have been listening to Hull on Estates and Succession Planning by Ian Hull and Susanna Popovic-Montag. The podcast that you have been listening to has been provided as an information service. It is a summary of current issues in estates and estate planning. It is not legal advice, and you're reminded to always speak with a legal professional regarding your specific circumstance. To listen to other Hull and Hull podcasts or leave any questions or comments, please visit our website at hullestatemediation.com.